most convincing story that maps onto reality, and that's why the central narrative is falling apart.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
We must see the central narrative for the fiction that it is. We are Americans.
While elections are sometimes messy, this was a secure election.
The founders began the fight for human liberty and self-governance, and it's up to us to finish the job.
I tell you what, we are in a truth emergency right now.
This is the end game.
All the people that have gone out there against the mainstream media and said, you're going to call us racist, you're going to call us potential Timothy McVeighs, fuck you. War.
Immensely seductive. Quite sure he's right. And obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
All right, everybody. So here we are. It is Wednesday, August 21st, 2024, the 1,309th day of dystopia. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. Welcome, everybody, to the Wednesday afternoon live stream. I am wearing my own merchandise. That's the new logo on a hat. There's the See You in the Gulags t-shirt. Look at that nice, happy couple just living in their suburban environment, wondering when they are going to be dragged off to the gulags just for acting like normal people. It's what it's come to. It's very scary out there. Hey, it's possible that I'll still get dragged off to the gulags. I hope not. I feel like things are going all right, generally speaking. But, ooh, baby, it's a wild world. All right. So here's the thing. I don't think we really need to talk about the DNC. That's the news today. There's a couple other interesting pieces of political news. One kind of devolution related, which I think is cool. And there were some devolution related comments today in Trump's speech, at least one in particular. And so I guess we might as well go through and hear a couple of clips from Trump. Why not, right? Let's hear the president speak about a few different important matters. And then we will talk about how he's in big, big trouble. And then we'll talk about how RFK Jr. wants to jump on the team. Sounds like he does. Who said that before me? Did anyone? I feel like the answer is no, but it's possible that it's yes. I guess it's entirely possible that some Q people who were into the JFK Jr. theory got really on board with the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. theory. Maybe. I hadn't heard it, but as soon as they started talking about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., considering a presidential run, my first response was he really shouldn't do that, because at the time, I was at least open to the idea that we were having a real election and a real campaign. I don't think that any longer, obviously. I think that anyone speaking out, who fails to speak out for the fact that Joe Biden did not receive 81 million real lawful American votes, should not be taken seriously until they are able to say that clearly and talk about what that means. And to my knowledge, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. still hasn't done that, but J.D. Vance hasn't really done that either. Donald Trump is really the only person in public life who has done that consistently. Marjorie Taylor Greene has said it every now and then. I guess I don't want to like leave any state or local officials out of that. There are some people who have spoken up consistently, but not ones in the national conversation, unless I'm missing someone. And if someone wants to bring that up, by all means, go ahead. RFK Jr., of course, has talked about machines. He's talked about election problems. He's talked about how the Democrats prevented him from even running in their primary in a major way, and now are preventing ballot access. So all of those things are elements, but it's not the same thing as saying Joe Biden never received 81 million real lawful American votes and therefore is not in any way a legitimate president. There was a brief conversation in my chat last night about whether or not there was irrefutable evidence of election fraud. And of course there is. At the bare minimum, every single certification that said that election was legitimate is an act of fraud. The people who made those certifications have a fiduciary duty not to sign off on stuff that was unlawful. And it turns out that's exactly what they did. And many of them did that under the cover of court precedent that is now being unwound in Georgia and in Nevada on issues surrounding whether or not the people who are tasked with certifying in given counties are just meant to be rubber stamps, or if they can review and then decline to certify elections that are uncertifiable. That tells you that they were instructed from some higher level to certify regardless of whether or not they thought there were problems with the elections. Now, that's no excuse to me. Those are like putting your name, signing your name and certifying an act of fraud means you are committing fraud. Okay. They know those elections can't be certified. When they are told it is their job to certify them anyway, their choice, the proper choice, is to resign. And we need to have the sort of society that understands that you don't just say, well, I've been told by the people who are more powerful than me that I have to go along with this crime. That is not how it's supposed to work. It's supposed to work the opposite way. So I was not very thrilled with Robert F. Kennedy at that point, because it was my belief, and it still is, that if you are running to replace Donald Trump, ignoring the fact that the election was stolen from him, then you should be assumed to be on the side of the people who stole it. Now, considering that the election is not real at all, it matters less to me. It's not like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has ever been going after Donald Trump. Let's actually take a listen to a couple of minutes of this, maybe a minute and a half or so. I went back today to find out, I think the first time that I have talked about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in relation to Donald Trump. Here is what I said on March 6th of 2023. Is the goal. They need to understand they were wrong. They need to understand who is right. And everybody can rally around the proper flag, the one that is positioned in the right place on the right issues. Unifying around bad priorities isn't smart. It isn't helpful. That's not how we advance. And of course, Marianne Williamson has absolutely no chance of winning the Democratic nomination. So she is also spending her time with the people pretending to have a realistic shot of setting up a third party. So again, they can appeal to the need to unify. On the left and the right, they want both sides of the normie sphere to center themselves around this third party idea. Well, we can all agree everybody hates Donald Trump. We can all agree that the fake president Didn't work out. So let's just start a third party with Andrew Yang and Evan McMullin and Liz Cheney. And hey, Marianne Williamson, you're welcome to go appeal to those people too. You don't want to just focus on the progressive communist left. You can focus on the people who pretend they're not on the progressive communist left, even though they are, and even though they push the same globalist agenda forward. But there was one interesting piece of presidential candidate news, and that's the stories that came out at the end of last week about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. potentially throwing his hat in the ring on the Democrat side. Now, despite being a Kennedy, I would guess that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has no chance whatsoever of winning the Democratic Party's nomination for president. But he can be a pretty major disruptor. He can attract people who voted for Joe Biden and have since realized that the vaccines are not safe, not effective, and were never necessary. And I would be surprised if indeed RFK Jr. does announce his candidacy for the Democratic nomination, if he actually centered his campaign around attacking Donald Trump. I don't think that would be a major priority for him. I think that he could attract quite a lot of attention in the Democrat Party, partly because of his family's name and history, his history as a liberal, and the fact that he has been speaking out against the vaccine for this entire time, for many years. And that might constitute its own massive block of support within the Democrat voter base. And that could cause them quite a lot of problems. RFK Jr. being up on a debate stage with his extensive knowledge of pharma and the regime surrounding pharma, its effect on politics, and the fact that the regime as it exists in the illegitimate administration has been pushing vaccine mandates and medical segregation. He is in most ways anti-establishment, and the establishment of both parties, the powers that be in the uniparty, do not want an anti-establishment candidate. He could basically play the role that Bernie Sanders played in 2015 and 2016, and he would get a lot of support. He would have support on social media. People would have no problem supporting him in their social circles. They would be called conspiracy theorists by some people, but those people wouldn't be taken seriously. And if he remains in that process, if they get to the point where primary voting is happening, they're going to see Robert F. Kennedy Jr. become the victim of election fraud and manipulation, much as they saw with Bernie Sanders in 2016. Bernie Sanders didn't actually fight at all. That's the problem with Bernie Sanders. He took the payoffs and went back to being a good little communist. Bernie Sanders has been committed to the advancement of the global regime for his entire career. He's been in the same mindset for 60 years and been pursuing the same things for 60 years. He attracted a populist base within the Democrat Party because people were rejecting the establishment. It's not like they were all for Bernie Sanders' version of communism that he goes around calling democratic socialism, even though it's just communism. So if he wants to throw his hat in the ring, good for him. I don't want him to be president, and I don't want Democrat Party politics running anything whatsoever. But he may very well end up presenting himself as an agent of chaos in the Democrat Party. If they go and steal primary elections from RFK Jr. and he has this big base of support who are now anti-vaccine and understand that he was telling the truth about an issue for a very long time, he could wake up a whole lot of still sleeping communists. I don't believe there is any possible scenario where he wins the Democrat nomination and it ends up being Trump versus Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So there's not much need to analyze the political dynamic that might emerge there. It's entirely possible that his candidacy alone and him being on the debate stages and going through a bit of that primary could wake a bunch of Biden voters up completely about the vaccines and about election fraud. And that would be incredible. It's the sort of thing that you could imagine Donald Trump actually setting in motion. There was a time where the two of them were going to be working together to get to the bottom of that vaccine issue. But then the claim is, the narrative is, that Donald Trump disbanded their panel after he was paid off by Big Pharma, as if Donald Trump's politics are for sale. We've already seen that they're not. But if that happens, it will be fun to watch. But let's talk about Donald Trump. Oh, wow. Okay, so I was muted. That's not too bad for 18 months ago, I think. I feel like I can stand behind most of that. The RFK thing, if he is, a lot of people are saying CIA director now. Everybody's just coming up with the ideas that we've been discussing for almost 2 years. It's amazing. The AG position would be cool. Vice president would be cool. People are like, how could he replace JD Vance? I'm like, what are you talking about? JD Vance is a running mate in a fake campaign for a fake election. All you got to do is snap your fingers and you can replace him. Just send out a tweet. That's how JD Vance became vice president. Oh, it was the RNC voting on it. Sure it was. We will see a point at which the 2020 election gets resolved. It has to get resolved. And at that point, you could replace Mike Pence. It wouldn't be replacing JD Vance. I posted this when Trump first sent that message about Vance out. What is a running mate named on Truth Social once the 2020 election is resolved? Mike Pence was the vice president who won that election. So someone would replace Mike Pence. Nobody has to replace JD Vance. JD Vance is a narrative piece who has been inserted as running mate for this fake campaign within this fake election. The RFK thing could work as AG for sure. Maybe there's even just an office where RFK can be appointed to go after all of the corrupt elements of the deep state. Any of those, I think, would be a good use of RFK Jr.'s time. And I think that any of those would be a strong reason for all of RFK Jr.'s base of support to get on board with the program and end their Trump derangement. It's okay if they don't, though. Some of them will, and the rest of them will go back to being Democrats and try to figure out how to vote for somebody who tried to mandate that they poison themselves. So many of the RFK Jr. supporters, including ones who call themselves conservatives, have been very anti-Trump about the vaccine, blaming Trump for the vaccine, essentially suggesting that Donald Trump has committed genocide. And it was fun to make fun of those people for the last 2 years. Well, we were obviously right and they were obviously wrong. And now RFK Jr. is going to be on board, which is going to present them a problem because the vaccine arguments they were making were not good arguments that they really believed. They were anti-Trump arguments because they are Trump deranged and have been Trump deranged. They've been Trump deranged the whole time. Some of them were on board with Donald Trump at various points because they thought it would make them a more powerful influencer, more popular, or they were going to get points within the party of false decorum, conning normies, whatever. They wanted to be anti-Trump about something they thought they could make it so it wasn't, they thought that this would be a cleaner argument against Trump. There's no way Trump's going to get past our vaccine thing. Everybody knows that the vaccines are bad. We're going to blame Trump for those vaccines. The left will eventually join us in blaming Trump for the vaccines at the point when they accept that the vaccines are bad. Well, that moment hasn't come. That moment's not going to come. Donald Trump didn't make anyone take the vaccine. So I think that Kennedy would be a good addition. I think it's impossible to say Trump Kennedy in any capacity, even if Kennedy's just got some role to clean up the FDA. right? Something kind of on the lower end. That's still the two most popular candidates getting together to take down the deep state. If you think that Kamala Harris is more popular than Robert F. Kennedy Jr., or will, maybe better yet, better said, will be more popular than Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in 2 months, I think that you're probably smoking crack. It gets worse for these people all the time. You allow it to get better for a little while so that everybody gets attached to it and they say, all right, this is going to work. Okay. They really commit to Kamala Harris, and they are really committed throughout this week, more each day to Kamala Harris. And that's not going to work out. I would be surprised. I'm still on the, team that thinks she's going to get swapped out. Again, it's a fake campaign. It's a fake election. Everything Kamala Harris is doing is, here are the things she's doing. Sitting on a plane, reading a speech off a teleprompter, and pretending to be happy. There's nothing else she's doing. She's not running a campaign. She's not choosing where to assign resources. All the things that you would expect a presidential candidate to be doing in a campaign, she's not doing any of those things. No one believes she's got any responsibility as vice president. They had U-Hauls outside the White House yesterday, and everybody's just like, oh, it's for Joe. They're going to get rid of Joe, and then Kamala's going to take over. She's doing so much now, they're just going to swap Joe out, and she'll be right in there. The whole thing's so silly. Yeah, they could swap these people out at any time. Did RFK Jr. ever debate? No, he didn't. And I don't think, well, I mean, I guess if, I don't know how we could have any sort of real campaign. So the idea that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to be named vice president and be in a vice presidential debate, that doesn't make sense. It would be Donald Trump being recognized as the winner. Mike Pence choosing not to go forward, and RFK Jr. replacing him there. I do wonder, and we've talked about this on Devolution before, I do wonder if there's some possibility that they will just try to make the replacements necessary and the fixes necessary in the system while never actually admitting or making obvious what has happened. Whether we will just travel through this period and it will resolve itself into some sort of normal situation where Donald Trump and JD Vance would then be in there without anybody understanding what has happened, the election not talked about, none of it resolved. I don't know how anybody could think that that would be a good situation if this actually is, if the purpose of any of this is to reach some sort of awakening or provide this country with a fresh start, maybe not a totally fresh start, but I don't know, a new lease on life, perhaps. That can't be resolved with these elections and pretending that these elections are valid and then sticking with these elections. That's not possible. That would be a defeat in every possible way for Donald Trump and MAGA, to the point where if that's the plan, it's a bad plan. And everyone who has been patient throughout this period should recoil from that possibility and reject that plan in full. You have to demand better to get better. And if we're going to stop at that place, then that's just surrender. Okay. What the heck is happening here? Wow. My Rumble sound just went on. So I have the platform that I do the streaming in, and then next to that I have a tab with Rumble so I can keep an eye on the chat over there. And sometimes the sound goes on over there, so I hear myself in some strange delay, and then I wonder if I'm talking at the wrong speed because I'm like, oh, it's live. Really disorienting. What else? Okay, so let's check out some Trump clips from this year speech he just gave. Let's have some fun. Hold on, I have to upload one more of these. Check this one out.
They were killing him under Obama. Did you see Barack Hussein Obama last night? Take little shots. He was taking shots at your president. And so was Michelle. You know, they always say, sure, please stick to policy. Don't get personal. And yet they're getting personal all night long, these people. Do I still have to stick to policy? Sir, you must stick to policy. You'll win it on the border. You'll win it with inflation. You'll win it with your great military that you built, that they gave away $85 billion worth of it in Afghanistan. Sir, you're going to win it on crime. The crime is running through the streets like never before. You're going to win it on all of these things, and maybe especially, I think two things, the economy, inflation, because I view them together. What they've done to inflation, and they caused it with energy. What they did with energy is so stupid.
Now, that is very interesting. First, he said that the Obamas are taking shots at your president. Trump assassination event 5.5 weeks ago, I think. That sound about right? 6 weeks ago. No, 5 weeks ago. Whatever. July 13th. Here we are on August 21st. So whatever that is. Sounds like about 39 days, if you ask me. Oh, man. 5.5 weeks. See, I should have just stuck with my first guess. Doing math live. Chris Paul, live math. That'll be a hit. Okay, so that is a very interesting statement. The Obamas taking shots at your president. What will we find out about Obama involvement with the assassination event? Will we see some indication that what we are seeing is a reenactment? I've talked about reenactments before, using the example of that old television show hosted by William Shatner. I said Stacy Keach last time, but William Shatner, called Rescue 911. They would have dramatic reenactments of 911 calls to scare the living shit out of you and then convince you that everything was going to be okay because you could just dial 911. So I guess you don't need guns anymore. Maybe that's what it was for. I don't know. But you know, people have staged Civil War reenactments for a very long time. So the event as a reenactment, perhaps the story is necessary because the story clues us into the possibilities and kind of gives us an understanding of the kind of the moral fulcrum points. And eventually we get an underlying list of facts that happened in a prior age that match up close enough to what we see in the Trump assassination event. I don't know. Very interesting to say that the Obamas were taking shots at your president. That was the first part. The second interesting thing in that clip was him mocking the people in and around his campaign and in the Con Inc. anti-Trump op who keep telling him how to talk about issues. Everybody always sides with the normies out there like Tim Pool and all of these people, Matt Walsh, when they tell us not to go after people like Joe Rogan. You can't say bad things about the moderates. You need these moderates. No, we don't. No, we don't. We had a massive majority in 2020. The majority has grown by leaps and bounds since then. And at no point did we have the support of any of these people. So we don't need their support, and we don't need to be nice to them after they've been doing nothing but lying for 4 years. And I know, maybe they're part of a good info op. They were just supposed to make everything be orchestrated exactly like this. And then we're going to find that out one day. If that happens, I will happily apologize to all of those people. If that doesn't happen, it's going to be good to know that they are still lying to everybody. And then at some point, it might be worth seeing where their allegiances were if they are still lying to millions of people at a time for $1 million a week. Do you get $1 million a week? Do you try to tell the truth in your life? If you're trying to tell the truth in your life at sometimes great cost to yourself and you're not getting paid $1 million a week, why are you listening to people who lie all the time and do get paid $1 million a week? On whose behalf are they lying? And apparently we're just supposed to believe it's Trump's behalf and maybe RFK's behalf. There is an RFK op. There has been an RFK op the entire time. And there are people around the kind of Q adjacent MAGA patriot movement op who have been part of the RFK op the whole time. And so there is good reason for caution when we approach that. Again, you heard me say it a year and a half ago. Find someone else who said any of that before that. I have no problem with an RFK unity ticket. In fact, I think it might do wonders in uniting the country. And if I'm right about that, it's well worth doing, because the truth is that the president is supposed to be the chief magistrate, and the Congress, the Senate, and the president are all supposed to be executing the will of the people. And if we have legitimate elections and we have an uncensored information environment where people can see what everyone else believes, and we have an understanding of who we are as a people, then the policy differences really are not that important. Okay. We need patriotism. We need honesty. We need strong, fortitude. That's what we need. We don't need someone who has all the right opinions about climate change right now. Okay. Let's be realistic about what this situation is and what we're actually trying to accomplish. Okay. We don't need help to beat the climate change agenda. We don't need help for any of this stuff. All right. We want help because it makes the country a better place. We will bring these people to our side. All right. The ones who are willing to come over, and the ones who are hesitant, and the ones who are rejecting like the MAGA agenda, they can go fuck themselves until they're ready. It's not that hard. We've been hashing these things out for years now, and these people declined to participate in the conversation because their public image was too precious for them to even consider that they might be wrong about things they don't know anything about. So we don't need to bend over backwards to compromise with these people for their votes in fake elections. And then, by the way, we are going to see a Con Inc. backlash, the Daily Wire types and the rest of them, especially if J.D. Vance goes bye-bye and RFK Jr. appears. I can imagine that all of the Ron DeSantis simps will have a problem with that. I would be shocked if any didn't. They would start calling Trump a Democrat, a liberal. This is who I told you he was. This guy's not conservative. We need to do X, Y, Z. Complaints to RNC, blah, blah, blah. They're going to go through the whole thing. And they're going to say, you can't trust Donald Trump on guns because he's working with RFK Jr. You can't trust Donald Trump on this, that, whatever, because he's working with RFK Jr. That will be the same attack from the same people. And it will have been good to smoke them out at that time. It doesn't matter if Ron DeSantis was kayfabe, Nikki Haley. It doesn't matter if any of them are kayfabe. What matters is the support base and the people communicating to the public who are going to then move public opinion. And I'm still 100% happy that I took that approach to the Ron DeSantis supporters. I think that that was the right move, and I think that we will continue seeing the groundwork of that pay off in the future. And I wasn't the only one, by the way. I'm not trying to just pile credit on myself. Another Trump clip.
When I lift my hand from the Bible after taking the oath of office, I will move to restore America to maximum strength and return the world to peace. We're going to return the world to peace. And mostly I can do it with a telephone call. You know, we don't have to send troops. I can do it with a telephone call. You go to war with another country that's friendly to us or even not friendly to us. You're not going to do business in the United States, and we're going to charge you 100% tariffs. And all of a sudden, the president or prime minister or dictator or whoever the hell is running the country says to me, sir, we won't go to war. I talked this world out of a lot of wars with telephone calls. I don't have to send in the troops. One of my most urgent priorities will be to quickly rebuild the readiness and spirit of the United States Armed Forces. And we had it built. We rebuilt it. We rebuilt the whole military, but it was decimated under this group of stupid people. You know, we had so much. When I came in, we had no ammunition. Did you know that? Remember? I used to talk about it. And I said, if it's true, which it was, why would you say that? We had people on television. Well, the United States has no ammunition. You know, some things you just keep to yourself, right? Do you remember I used to, from North Carolina, do you remember I used to talk about that all the time? Doesn't.
He's dropping some gems today. That kind of sounded to me a little bit like soft war, talking about making war impossible based on economic concerns. If you go to war, you will not do business with the United States. There will be 100% tariffs on your products. Can you do that in a situation where the world is dominated by the global regime's central bankers and their fiat currency, currently branded as the US dollar, but the branding as the US dollar doesn't matter? What matters is that they have a fiat currency and that they used to use it to control the world, and that no longer works. So Trump is suggesting a situation where that state of play is over. I mean, unless he is unless he's suggesting that we maximize on that state of play, and that Donald Trump, as the global overlord, simply stops other countries from going to war because he cuts them off from all their money immediately. And that's clearly not what it is. So he's talking about something that may well be soft war. And in that, Jason Lowery describes the wars of the future being essentially just drone battles, but even that would be obviated because it would be pointless. You would already know who has more energy on one side or another. So going to war in the first place would be impractical. You got to like what he's saying, man. I mean, this is what we're working toward, is it not? A situation where we don't have the fiat bankers controlling everything, where we aren't in a state of perpetual war as an absolutely necessary element of their control. That's what enforces their hold on the fiat banking regime in all of these various countries. That's why we go to war in these countries. So the incentive for war is basically dropped to zero, which is a huge part of going to war. So we have, and then elections. And if elections could be secured and verifiable on the blockchain, you know, maybe it's going to be the situation that people have to take some time and gain a comfort level with that system. I don't know whether or not that's the case. I don't know what they have planned as a bridge. I don't know what they have planned as a replacement, if the replacement's ready. But there has to be one of those, again, or else it's a bad plan. Because if the country all figured out faster that our elections were stolen, then they would be demanding a solution for that a lot faster. So you'd think that the solution has to be available and ready at any point. And I think we probably have to get the hose again before people are willing to stand up and say something. And it may be that we need to get the hose again more than one time. That would be very unfortunate. I saw a post going around today with Klaus talking about how there were going to be all of these crisis events before the end of the year. Man, stuff like that makes me think that Klaus is just I hadn't used that in a while. The little operation clip. Great. I wonder if they can hear that on the podcast. Maybe it doesn't come through so well in the audio. But yeah, if Klaus is out there saying things like that, it's time to start considering that maybe Klaus is just a comedic actor too, who is the most comically absurd supervillain in the history of fiction or reality. But who knows? I mean, I expect that we're going to see all sorts of distractions. The problem is they can't actually convince people that the distractions are worth their time and energy anymore because they don't seem real. And part of them not seeming real is that there's some kind of tell in all of them, and they're all kind of prefaced in advance. The man, Ghost of Base Patrick Henry today had a funny post about Iran. Let me find it really quick and I'll just read it here. He said, so Sputnik Africa ran a headline, Iran will retaliate against Israel at a moment of maximum surprise. The quote that they used, the timing, conditions, and manner of Iran's response will be meticulously orchestrated to ensure that it occurs at a moment of maximum surprise, perhaps when their eyes are fixed on the skies and their radar screens. They will be taken by surprise from the ground, or perhaps even by a combination of both. And Sputnik wrote, Iran's retaliation will be carefully calibrated to avoid any possible adverse impact that could potentially influence a prospective ceasefire in Gaza, the mission said. The response is intended to induce profound regret within the Israeli government, the statement said. And Ghost of Base Patrick Henry just said that Iran's troll game is next level. And I think he's right. We talked about this a couple months back in an episode on them saving face. That's what this stuff is. Today we heard about a Ukraine drone attack against Moscow with 11 drones, all of which were shot down and didn't harm anything. That situation didn't have to actually even happen for that narrative to happen and for the narrative effect to happen. And because it didn't have to happen, and we're never going to have any proof that it did happen, we should assume that it didn't happen, because Ukraine has no ability to actually come back in this war, if there even is a war. I mean, for 2 years, Ukraine has made absolutely zero progress. Zero progress. And now all of a sudden, 2.5 years into it, they're about to make a comeback. It's too stupid to even engage with, which is why we shouldn't engage with it. Like, this is one of those things that you're just like, okay, I'm going to ignore this. This is just not worth anybody's time. Why would we waste our time on such trivial nonsense as a made-up attack that was thwarted? One more Trump clip.
GOP Chairman Jason Simmons, who's been a friend of ours for a long time. Where's Jason? Nice tall character right here. Thank you very much, Jason. And somebody that's been with me from day one, he's a real general. You know, we have the real generals and we have the fake woke generals that did so poorly in Afghanistan, should have all been fired. But this is a real general, Keith Kellogg. Right, Keith? And this is a great group. It's good to see you, Keith. He's been with me from before day one, right? He said, that guy should run. We got to get him to run. I like those guys. They were here before I ran. You know, there's quite a few of them, too. We have the front row, Joes. You know that?
So the real general is there with Donald Trump. He's not one of those TV generals. Nobody wants anything to do with those awful TV generals. Those TV generals are the ones who are so woke. They're the ones destroying the military and turning it into a place of wokeness and vaccine mandates, but not Keith Kellogg and the other real generals. Isn't it great that Trump still has the real generals around him? And when does Joe Biden ever seem like he has real generals around him? I've never seen Joe Biden with real generals around him. It's just Lloyd Austin all the time. And maybe Lloyd Austin is a real general and not a TV general. Maybe he's not just playing a part, but I mean, come on. He's certainly playing a part, whether or not he's a real general. Let's put it that way. Keith Kellogg. Wow. Keith Kellogg was in the Pentagon during the attacks. Hold on. I'm just reading a little bit about Keith Kellogg. I read his book a few years ago. I would recommend it to everybody. Keith Kellogg was in the Pentagon during the attacks on September 11th, 2001. Following the crash of American Airlines Flight 77 into the Pentagon, Kellogg assumed responsibility of the alternate command post at Raven Rock Mountain Complex with U.S. Deputy Secretary of Defense Paul Wolfowitz. That is really something, is it not? So that sounds like he was. I'm sending this to John right now because I don't know that we've talked about Keith Kellogg before. And every time I do this, so John Harold's mind is like an encyclopedia of devolution. Like when I send him this, he's going to be like, oh yeah, that was in devolution number 7 or something immediately. Like 3/4 of the way down the page, you'll find everything I've ever thought about Keith Kellogg. Like, okay, computer boy. John's kind of like a computer for real. But I wanted to look for, it was not what I was going to be looking for. Someone in my chat mentioned that, there we are. How about that? Following Kellogg's retirement from active duty, he joined Oracle Corporation as an advisor to its Homeland Security division. He was employed by Cubic Corporation and earlier by CACI International Inc. since January 2005. Let me see if it's got another mention of Oracle here. Oracle exec flies out to Iraq to help with rebuilding. Let's see what this is all about. ComputerWeekly.com. Okay, well, Oracle Keith Kellogg in the search bar. Let's see. Anything? No. What in the world? Here's what we'll do. We're not, this is making it look like the article has disappeared. It has been deleted, but we are not going to let that deter us. We are going to check an archive. Maybe it was backed up. How about that? This page was last archived 7 years ago. Look at that. Now we can do the research properly. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Kellogg. Here we go. Retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Joseph Keith Kellogg joined Oracle in July as part of the company's efforts to bolster its government sales. And this article is from November 2003. The leadership skills and character traits that made Keith the right person for this mission are the same ones that prompted Oracle to hire him to lead our Homeland Security team after he retired in July from a 32-year military career, said Oracle spokesman L. Paul Bremer. Kellogg is not rejoining the Army, but will be working for the Coalition Provisional Authority as a U.S. citizen. Kellogg is expected to leave for Iraq by the end of the month and should be back at Oracle in a few months. His position will not be filled during his absence. He was Oracle's Senior Vice President of Homeland Security Solutions, taking a leave of absence to serve as Chief Operating Officer for the U.S.-led Coalition Provisional Authority in Iraq. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he must have had a chapter about that in his book. Very exciting, isn't it? Just hanging out at a Trump speech in his little fake presidential campaign. It's a fantastically entertaining fake presidential campaign as far as fake presidential campaigns go. All right. Let me see if I can find, I'm going to look in the Kellogg book really quickly and see if I can't find something on his time at Oracle. Hold for processing. I know it's probably boring and annoying to get this dead air. Here it is. His book from 2021, I believe, called War by Any Other Means. Maybe my computer will let me open it. There we are. Oh, how about that? An index. How convenient. Wow. How's it possible that Oracle's not mentioned in this book? It really makes me wonder. Oh, okay. He does have it. 43 and 44. Here we go. Let me see if I can share the Books app. Does that work? There we are. How about that? It all turned out to be worth it. I had just settled into a really good civilian executive management position with Oracle Corporation when I got a call in late September 2003 from General Myers, by then chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and Paul Wolfowitz, the Deputy Secretary of Defense. General Myers said, "Can you come in tomorrow for a discussion on Iraq?" I said, sure, and met with him in the chairman's office early the next day. General Myers said, would you go to Iraq and be the chief operating officer for the Coalition Provisional Authority? The CPA, led by Ambassador Jerry Bremer, was the transitional government of Iraq created in May 2003. Because the CPA was a Defense Department organization, Bremer theoretically reported to the Secretary of Defense. However, he had the title of U.S. Presidential Envoy and Administrator in Iraq, and he took that to mean that he reported to the president. Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, and Myers wanted someone to rein Bremer in and keep communication lines open with the Pentagon staff. I would be that someone. My answer was no. Wolfowitz said something about recalling me to active duty. I told him what he could do with that idea. That night, I told my wife, Paige, about the meeting. She brought me up short. You personally know every senior military commander on the ground. You can work with them. You can help. You should go. I conceded that she was right, but I saw the occupation of Iraq for what it was, a mess. The next morning, I spoke with Myers and Wolfowitz. Okay, I said, I'll do it, but I have two conditions. The first was that I had to get permission from Oracle's Larry Ellison. After all, I had just come on board at his company. I had great respect for him and Oracle's president, Safra Catz, and they had entrusted me with work on important homeland security issues. Wolfowitz said he knew Ellison and would make that call. My other condition was that I take an operations team with me. And then he goes on. Okay, very interesting. That's a whole lot of respect for Oracle's Larry Ellison and for his position at Oracle. And so that is Keith Kellogg, Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, from his book, War by Any Other Means. What an interesting side dig we just took ourselves on. So the real generals, Trump still has the real generals on his side. Joe Biden, of course, will never be president. Let's not embarrass ourselves. People in the chat are asking about how to watch this on the Rumble app. Here is what you need to do. You need to play this video. from the link in the Substack post. You come to Rumble on the web browser, their web platform, okay? And you got to be signed in to your Rumble account on the web platform. And then after you have watched part of that movie or part of that video, sorry, you can either save it into your watch later and that will bring it up on the app, or it should just appear in your history on the app, which I think you can access by pressing library. I am not generally Rumble customer support, but maybe that's going to be convenient for more than just the person in the chat. And I hope that this improves your life in some small way. Okay. So we talked about Kennedy. We talked about Barack Hussein Obama speaking at the Democrat National Convention. That whole affair is just so embarrassing. I can't imagine people are watching this and enjoying it. What an absolute clown show the Democrat Party is. Not that the Republican Party is much better, but at least there's that MAGA element in the Republican Party that is authentic and cares about meaningful stuff. Let's listen to that. I want to listen to part of that Trump clip again about, did I just ruin that clip? About his advisors telling him what he should focus on and what he should talk about. Listen to the subjects they're talking about, because these are the subjects that all of the Con Inc. people and the Tim Pools and the Dave Rubins, the DeSantis simps, the town hall retards like Kurt Schlichter. These are the things that they tell Trump to focus on, the Daily Wire guys, because they're all like, we need to win an election. He's got to focus on the issues everybody really cares about. How is it that the issues that everyone really cares about are the ones that the TV started focusing everybody's attention on after Ron DeSantis started running his fake presidential primary campaign? How much did the TV talk about the massive immigration problem up until that point? Did they ever give Donald Trump credit for it? No. They made Ron and Greg Abbott and people like Brian Kemp stars of immigration because they were flying immigrants around the country and busing them to Washington, D.C. The same is true with many of their other positions. All of them supported the COVID plan lock, stock, and barrel until they didn't. Now, if they were all themselves mid-negotiation and were doing the best they can do, and Donald Trump wants to vouch for them at some point in the future, he can do that. But otherwise, give me a break with these people. Honestly, listen to the arguments they make. And you might say, you might be inclined to say, I'm going to play this in just a second. You might be inclined to say, but these are still the issues that most Americans care about. Yes, because we have a media problem and it feeds this political problem and they support one another. That's the point. If we had different communications, people would believe in different things and they wouldn't be focused on all this stuff. And it's not that these issues aren't important at all. It's just that they're not the main thing. And the focus, the constant focus on these issues is why the main thing never gets talked about. Let's play this clip again.
They were killing him under Obama. Did you see Barack Hussein Obama last night? Take little shots. He was taking shots at your president. And so was Michelle. You know, they always say, sure, please stick to policy. Don't get personal. And yet they're getting personal all night long, these people. Do I still have to stick to policy? Sir, you must stick to policy. You'll win it on the border. You'll win it with inflation. You'll win it with your great military that you built that they gave away $85 billion worth of it in Afghanistan. Sir, you're going to win it on crime. The crime is running through the streets like never before. You're going to win it on all of these things, and maybe especially, I think two things, the economy, inflation, because I view them together, what they've done to inflation, and they caused it with energy.
So what do we have? Immigration, inflation, crime, and the military. But Yeah, I guess they can make the case on that. I don't think that one is going to like sway people. Most of the people who have that is something that they care about are already on board, I think. I guess we'll see. But no, don't stick to the Con Inc. issues. Stick to election fraud. How about just talk only about election fraud and what that means? That's the best campaign you could have. And I hope that Robert F. Kennedy does that too. I don't know why everybody thinks that like people want all of their pet issues catered to, that we have to like address certain issues to certain people. And because that's the thing that they're angriest about online, you have to convince them to like you the best on the thing they're angriest about. Whoever gets convinced that way? People get convinced of things when they are forced in their lives to make decisions one way or another, and like where there's no going back, because then they're that person. There was a lot of talk last week about Trump firing his main campaign people. That is also a Con Inc. info op, it seems to me. I don't know what the obsession with that is, why Trump has to fire his campaign people. The campaign is Trump and whatever he says, and then how things go in the public narrative beyond that, which Trump is already in control of. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to communicate to the public. It's so silly that, and again, this is part of the intellectual kids table problem, because a lot of the people saying that stuff at this point who are really committed, maybe even diehard MAGA, are just on Twitter all day talking to people who don't know anything. And so, of course, the people who don't know anything are going to care about the stuff that they see on TV. They are mad about what they see on television, and we are going to compromise with these people. Why? There's not interesting conversations there. Nobody's going to learn anything. It's not going to change any minds. It's just the same conversations over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And then they're like, well, Donald Trump needs to say this about this conversation. Did you see that this purple-haired person destroyed Tucker Carlson about what? They look at headlines in their dumb info op websites, and then they tell us how they feel about them. They memorize all the little facts of every issue. Oh, did you hear about the facts that came out today? They refute the facts that came out yesterday that you were thinking were true. Ha ha. I own the libs. Ha. Pour me another cup of liberal tears. I'm going to drink it. These people are so stupid, man. Learned absolutely nothing in 4 years, or probably really much longer, because all of these people were never Trump, and then they were pro-Trump, and then they were never Trump again, and now they're going to be pro-Trump again, and people are like, yeah, these guys are principled. No, they're not. What more proof do you need? There's nothing principled that these guys hang on to. They just continue to say that whatever they think their hot take on a given issue is the most conservative and therefore the most principled. Matt Walsh, everybody going bonkers. Here, let's see. Let's just look at him. Matt Walsh running the greatest costume op ever. Look at Matt Walsh. He disguised him. This is unbelievable. Twice knocked out by Matt Walsh. Let's try it one more time. I'm going to try to share this article one more time. And maybe it won't work. You're not allowed to say Matt Walsh on StreamYard. So I don't know how much you guys missed of these wonderful lines. This is a press release, I believe. This is a promotion for Matt Walsh's political satire film, Am I Racist? He is doing a publicity stunt, and people are like, oh, you're the libs. He's literally just trying to self-promote. Matt Walsh is going and influencing. That is what he's doing. It's really incredible. Really incredible. Oh, he tried to interrupt an interview between Chuck Schumer and Caitlin Collins and then was escorted out like Greta Thunberg. Matt Walsh, a bearded Greta Thunberg who produces trans content 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for years on end, and then goes in disguise to the DNC for a PR stunt. These people are pathetic. And actually, you know what? Sorry. I have to do this because as soon as I think, oh man, I bet there's something there, it usually turns out that there is something there. The Irish Star, what kind of outlet is this? All right. Well, I've decided that is not a whole worth climbing down. Okay. I'm going to get to Substack questions in just a second. I want to do one more story. This is Newsweek from earlier today. Although this was mentioned, I guess, yesterday or maybe at the end of last week. Donald Trump accused of committing massive crime with reported phone call. Donald Trump has been accused of violating federal law by allegedly calling Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss the ceasefire deal the U.S. is helping negotiate between Israel and Hamas. The former president allegedly made the call, on August 14th, so 1 week ago, according to Axios, which cited two unnamed, quote, U.S. sources who were briefed on the call. So two people somewhere inside the U.S. who were briefed on the call. Now, were they American sources? Who were they briefed by? Were they briefed by the Trump people or were they briefed by the Israelis? Benjamin Netanyahu's people? Probably neither. They were probably alerted by people who were not briefed on the call, but had heard that a call happened. Someone told them that there was a call, and they then made up the details because they are trying to destroy both Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. I believe that Benjamin Netanyahu, no matter what his history might be, is at this point fully under control. He just visited Donald Trump a couple of weeks ago, and hopefully I can find this picture quickly. He visited Trump at Mar-a-Lago after speaking to the illegitimate government, and Donald Trump sent out this picture of him where he literally has the upper hand. Now, did Donald Trump just do something awkward for the cameras? Doesn't even make sense to assume that that is what it is any longer. It's obvious what he's doing, and it's obvious why he's doing it. And it's quite clear that both sides of the uniparty want Netanyahu out. They have this entire time. So this seems to be along those lines. And of course, they're going to try to escalate to a war. They've been trying to do this for quite a while. Let's continue. The next day, however, Netanyahu's office denied that the call took place. In a statement quoted by the Times of Israel, a spokesperson said, contrary to media reports, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did not speak yesterday with former President Donald Trump. It is unclear if a call between Trump and Netanyahu took place, and Newsweek has contacted representatives of the former president for comment. Already, this should be past any standard of embarrassment for Newsweek. It isn't, though. So they're reporting on Axios's reporting. Axios based their reporting on U.S. sources who were briefed on the call, and it's unclear whether there was a call. So if there wasn't a call, then no one was briefed on the call, which means Axios quoted two sources who made it up. Now, there could have been a call. There could have been a call. But if there wasn't a call, then no one was briefed on it. It's also possible that stories were leaked to two people who always go to the media with whatever, and misinformation was fed into the system, which they then fed through Axios, making Axios now look stupid and making Newsweek look stupid. This is the problem with being a mainstream, reputable, authoritative outlet and never checking sources because the story's too good. But let's continue. If Trump did make the call, he would potentially be breaking the law known, see, these articles are just garbage now, known as the Logan Act, enacted in 1799, prohibits unauthorized private citizens from negotiating with foreign governments on behalf of the U.S. Everyone in the regime does that. They negotiate with global governing bodies all the time. Now, you could, I guess, quarrel with the on behalf of the U.S. I have no doubt that private citizens. Yeah, I would think that the transnational corporations working through global governing bodies like the World Economic Forum and the UN would fit under this. I'll have to spend some more time with that. I've been making fun of the Logan Act all year, for probably longer than that, actually. Trump used to meet with Jair Bolsonaro. He's had Orban visit him. He's had Xi. Has he had Xi in this devolution term? I don't know about that. I can't remember right now. Poland's president, not Tusk, who is the man the regime treats as president, even though he's not president, but Duda. It's basically like the way they just decide who president is in Venezuela. They are doing that in Poland. They do it wherever they want, which should tell everybody very clearly that elections aren't real. But, you know, people can't believe that could ever happen here in the United States. Surely our elections are real. No, they're not. They're not. Could we have a situation where we did have real elections? I suppose theoretically we could, but we don't have real elections. So we should stop pretending. And at the point we stop pretending, we might be able to create the situation where we do have real elections. But we're not going to create that situation while we are pretending our elections are already real and that the solution to our problem of this millennia's old cabal is to go down to our elementary school cafeteria and push buttons on an iPad, like all the children are doing when their parents drop them off there. American Muckrakers, an organization that states it seeks to hold politicians and officials accountable, has filed a request with the U.S. Department of Justice and the U.S. Department of State. Axios cited one source as saying that Trump's alleged call was intended to encourage Netanyahu to take the ceasefire deal that was on the table. However, the unnamed source told the outlet that they did not know what the actual conversation was. So they're making it up and also making up what Trump's position would be. These people are insane. Multiple people have criticized Trump on social media following reports of the phone call. Oh, wow. multiple people on social media have criticized him for something that may or may not have happened, about how he may or may not have acted, since they have no idea. Political commentator and DNC member David Atkins said the allegation would be a massive crime if true. Similarly, actor Stephen Pasquale said it was pretty balls to the wall treason, the thing that may or may not have happened, the position Trump may or may not have taken. Also, Trump's the president. In the category of pretty balls to the wall treason, stealing elections, supporting a fake president. Good luck, Steve. Hold on. I have to see who this guy is, by the way. It's a Hollywood thing. Oh, check it out. This guy. Who's this guy? No one could ever possibly know. Who the hell is this guy? Haven't seen it, 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 haven't seen it. Alien versus Predator Requiem. 2 episodes of 6 Feet Under. 2 episodes of Coma. Never heard of it. Rescue Me. That was a network TV show. 93 episodes. I guess that's going to make a lot of money there. Why is this guy being quoted for his anti-Trump political opinion as expressed on X, formerly Twitter? Can anyone tell me why this article exists? Certainly not as a piece of journalism. The Lincoln Project, a conservative group dedicated, hold on. Here we go. Dedicated to, quote, stop Trump, break MAGA, and save America, end quote, wrote, there's absolutely no line he won't cross. The president will talk to foreign leaders. So he was already at Trump's house in late July. I love how Newsweek says he was there when the Israeli prime minister was in the U.S. to meet with President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Pass. All right. Whatever. Ceasefire, blah, blah. Man. Sooner or later, they're just going to have to come out and say, yeah, you know, it turns out that Donald Trump has just been president the whole time. I know you're not allowed to say it. It's a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy theory to say that. How can you prove such a thing? You need to prove this thing to me before you're allowed to say it. Hey, has Joe Biden ever seemed like president at any point? Does Joe Biden seem like he is exercising the powers and authorities of president? There was a U-Haul in front of the White House yesterday. No one knows why. Joe Biden has not discernibly ever been at the White House. There are appearances that have been filmed from the White House. And hey, man, it's entirely possible that a real person named Joe Biden, who is pretending to be president right now, was at the White House multiple times to film various pieces of content. That's entirely possible. But Joe Biden does not work out of the White House. They had a soundstage in the building across the street from which the character Joe Biden conducted his fake presidency for like the first 2 years. Just video calls. And they said it was all for COVID. Oh, he can't work in the White House because of COVID. Man, I mean, what are we supposed to say about these things at this point? Sooner or later, they're just going to be like, yeah, Donald Trump was actually president the entire time. Whoops. Whoops. We just reported to you for 3 years about how Joe Biden was president because we were told that in some sense he was, and he had access to the White House once a week. once a month. He sees his kids. Joe Biden has custody of the White House. He sees the Lincoln bedroom one weekend a month. Oh man. All right, let's get to some Substack questions and comments. William says, control the narrative, control of you. The news is fake. The war is real. Q. Yep. I mean, control over the means of information is what it is all about. I'm 100% with you on that. Lighthearted Lori says, Chris, I forgot where I heard this, and I want to know what you think about the possibility of Truth Social taking over X, formerly Twitter. I looked up what this person said about X and that it stands for a placeholder in math. It would be extremely interesting if that happened, wouldn't it? So I don't know what you might have heard. I guess I would want to hear that comment to be able to comment on it myself. But I also think maybe you're talking about something that I said. I have said before that I think X will ultimately be like a clearinghouse. There's clearly some association between Truth Social and X because there's a clear association between X and Rumble, and Truth Social is on the Rumble cloud, and those platforms are closely linked. I think that there will probably be a lot of those kinds of connections in the future. And I've talked about this at length on an episode, so I don't need to rehash it. I did an episode about TikTok that discusses all of this stuff at length. I think that TikTok will be in that same mix. I think that TikTok probably already is in that same mix. And people are like, well, if these platforms are under control, why are they still censoring? And I ask those questions myself sometimes. And, you know, if you believe that there is a plan and we're seeing that plan enacted and carried out over the course of these last few years, then at some point, you know, I guess you just kind of undo that kink in the hose and just let everything flow. And that point hasn't happened yet. And that's been extremely frustrating as a person who is severely censored. But, you know, there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm not going to spend all my time complaining about it. I hope that people are made whole for their government just so blatantly violating their rights, getting their access to public communication platforms removed, particularly when those public communication platforms are linked directly to the government. These are not private companies. They've never been private companies. If somehow Twitter is private now, I would be shocked. But it wasn't before. Governments have, the government, the American government, other governments as well, have had a significant level of control over the information displayed on these platforms. I was actually talking about this. I may have mentioned it on Devolution Power Hour on Saturday night, but I was talking about it at dinner during GART with some of the other Badlands guys. I think it was like Zach and Alpha and Burning Bright. I think that there will probably be a time, maybe on November 5th, but maybe even a couple months after, where the censorship will be removed. Because what you're going to see from these Con Inc. people is, first, you're going to see attempts to make Donald Trump and MAGA compromise in order to maintain the support of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his supporters. That should never be done. No compromise, not in the least, not for unity, not for anything. Okay? They will come to us. It'll be just fine. It'll be just fine. It's not a real election. You do not need the votes. What we need is to adhere to principles. We need elections fixed. We don't need votes from people who are going to hold out until we speak to them the right way in a situation like this that they claim is dire. Well, if the situation is dire, then get on the right side and stop trying to enforce your viewpoint. It's the idea that you can that everyone should just be out there nitpicking Donald Trump all the time to show how objective they are and to show how special their opinion is when they've been wrong about absolutely everything up till now. You don't compromise with people like that. Okay? Like, we can welcome them. We don't have to be mean to them as long as they're not lying and trying to like undermine Donald Trump at every turn as they've done for the last 8 years. But no compromises. So at that point, I think there will be, each of these points will be opportunities for sifting. Let's say Donald Trump is announced as the loser of the election. Just hypothetically. We know it's stolen, obviously. There will still be people suggesting that it's wrong of us to talk about that. And immediately you should know that all of those people are willing to go down with the ship. Those moments are still going to happen. There might be moments where they undermine Donald Trump and efforts for election integrity. Let's say this, hypothetically, Donald Trump is announced by the TV as the winner. And the scenario I lay out often as the best case scenario for the regime, for the Uniparty, Donald Trump announced as the winner, barely. And Uniparty candidates fill up down ballot, House, Senate, state, local, right down to your school boards, just Uniparty. And Donald Trump as the winner says, we still need transparency in all these elections. We need verifiability in all of these elections. We should audit everything, forensic audits across the entire country, including my presidential races. That is definitely a possibility. It's one that these guys will attempt to shut down because they will say that it is just the conspiracy theorists doing this and that we should be happy because we already have the presidency and a Republican majority in the Senate, barely, or maybe a split. Oh, they would love that. Oh, they would love that if they could then have a Con Inc. guy in the vice presidency to decide with the Uniparty on a split vote. Thank goodness JD Vance isn't part of the Uniparty or Con Inc. or anything. And thank God he's just pure red-blooded MAGA warrior, that JD Vance. Thank goodness. Yeah, Con Inc., the establishment Republicans would absolutely try to shut down those efforts and preserve the election fraud system. So, you know, we're still going to see attempts like that. And that's why we have to be cognizant of all those things. And for what it's worth, there's going to be multiple outs where they try to get Donald Trump out of there. I don't doubt for a second that Jamie Raskin wasn't telling the truth when he said that they were going to try to deem Trump disqualified with a vote in the Congress, the new Congress that will be sat via illegitimate elections. So we're going to just say it's okay that Donald Trump has won, and then we're all going to celebrate. Trump won, too big to rig. We did it. It was all the ballot harvesting. By the way, Con Inc.'s going to take credit for all that stuff. Ballot harvesting, the early voting, the mail-in voting, that's Scott Pressler and Charlie Kirk and those guys. They're going to say, MAGA didn't get on board with our strategies. That just so happen to be the strategies that directly support the election fraud apparatus. There's going to be a lot of these things left, man. I tried to say in 2022 after the midterms that we have not come anywhere close to seeing our last betrayals. People are going to have to understand that people are going to go this route. There will be sifting processes over and over and over again. And throughout those, you're still going to have to, we're all going to have to be on the right side of these things, which means no compromise over things like votes in a fake election. Dynamite in North Carolina today, Trump told the audience that he will institute a tariff at 100% rate on any country, friend, or foe that instigates war on any nation. To me, this is more evidence showing his determination to dismantle the military-industrial complex and remove the scourge of NATO from the world. Another way of Trump draining the world's swamp. 100% in agreement. Danomite, as you have probably already heard, I have already talked about that. But I am absolutely with you. This is excellent, excellent news. These are great clips. These are the things that make it sound like everything is still entirely on track. And again, Donald Trump looks 100% confident. He is not worried. He has never seemed worried. There's a reason for that. Robin says, what do you think of the correction on the jobs numbers? Maybe this is the way normies finally have to face the truth about how bad the economy is. It's also exposing MSM is lying to them about everything. It's in their faces. Getting hard to stay a village idiot unless you are an idiot. Those two characters can't be for real. Okay. I don't know what two characters you're talking about. Don't know how to resolve that part right now. As for the job numbers, let's think about it. Yeah. I mean, they have revised the job numbers down. Here, I'll grab a headline for you. Hold for processing. Here we are. Here we are. Let's do the country's paper of record, the old gray lady, the New York Times. As always, by the way, this is in the archive, okay? You can blast through paywalls that way on most of these sites. As long as someone has already archived that piece, someone with a subscription, I guess, that thing goes in the archive and you can then see the whole article, even though it exists behind a paywall on the normal New York Times site, okay? So let's just get the first couple of paragraphs here. The U.S. economy added far fewer jobs in 2023 and early 2024 than previously reported, a sign that cracks in the labor market are more severe and began forming earlier than initially believed. On Wednesday, the Labor Department said monthly payroll figures overstated job growth by roughly 818,000 in the 12 months that ended in March. That suggests employers added about 174,000 jobs per month during that period, down from the previously reported pace of about 242,000 jobs, a downward revision of about 28%. The revisions, which are preliminary, are part of an annual process in which monthly estimates based on surveys are reconciled with more accurate but less timely records from state unemployment offices. The new figures, once they're made final, will be incorporated into official government employment statistics early next year. So the illegitimate Biden administration has been bragging about its jobs record, which already consisted primarily of replacing the jobs that were lost during the very deadly pandemic. So all of those were already coming back. Trump's economy was booming. The idea that the illegitimate Biden administration has been handling the economy well, I should say the case being made by the media and the uniparty and the regime that the Biden economy has been handled well, was in large part based on the job numbers. And now we find out that the job numbers are nowhere close to what they had represented. And in many of these articles today, it lists the Obama administration, of which Joe Biden was a part, doing the same thing back in 2009. And it's just manipulation of government statistics. So facing the truth of how bad the economy is, that part I would maybe just add. We don't know how bad the economy is based on the jobs numbers, okay? Because the jobs numbers are fake. And you just saw that. So these numbers have been revised does that mean that these are then the real numbers? Well, these are the real numbers that people will refer to now. It is the takeaways are that the government skews these numbers to make itself look good. So there's that. However, this might affect the polls or people's views of the Biden administration. I assume that this will hurt the case if they are making the case that Biden is good for the economy. This will hurt that case. This will be a good talking point in arguments against liberals where they try to claim that the economy is good. This is the sort of thing that people will throw back in their faces. Well, yeah, it's good if you're overestimating the jobs numbers by nearly 1 million, but otherwise it's not very good. So it's effective for that as a talking point. But beyond that, I mean, this isn't something that I would spend a lot of time on. Jonathan Drake says, I doubt jobs numbers, fake or real, factor much into any random person's outlook on the economy. Okay, so very, very much in line. Grocery bills, any energy costs, filling up their gas tank likely have more of an impact. And any normal person can see those going up and being more difficult to manage. Agreed. You'd be surprised at how many village idiots still believe MSM. Robin says they try to pretend that everything is normal. I mean, really, is there anything normal about things now? It's why this farce carries on. Trump has to keep putting it in their faces until the light goes on and they semi-wake. Perhaps. I mean, these are reruns, and maybe they're effective reruns, and hopefully they are waking some people up. But again, it's life situations that wake people up. I really, I mean, I've said this for years. The way that the political conversation plays out on social media is so stupid. Just a constant obsession with normie bullshit. The assumption that all of this stuff is actually news because the news publishes it. You have a fake number from before that people didn't really believe. And now we have a much lower fake number now that everyone on our side is convincing ourselves we must believe in order to repeat it to other people. This is why you just have to focus on principles and enacting those principles. One of those principles is we absolutely have to have legitimate elections if we want to have any government at all. So instead of focusing on legitimate elections, we focus on this. And by the way, I'm not saying it's bad that you brought it up or anything. I'm just saying, look at what the common conversation is today. How many minutes and how many hours cumulatively and in people's attention are being used on this. Now, if somebody needs the lesson that the government lies about the statistics it produces to make it look good, well, then I guess fine. But if you're listening to my show, you don't need that argument. Or maybe people need to hear it again. I don't know. What else you guys want to talk about? Because I don't know if you can hear it, but I'm having a little throat thing, which is weird because I haven't been sick at all in years, but I just went through a long period of traveling. Maybe it's just slightly off. I did go on a run this morning, so I'm fine, but yes, a little off. Rise Attire in the chat. Hello, Adrian. He's the one who designed the new logo. The see you in the gulags. See you in the gulags design. The Reality Prime design is my favorite one. That is over on his site. You can just hit cancelcouture.com for the merch site. I didn't expect to do a commercial, but there you go. Commercial for Rise Attire. Oh, wait. Got to go back to Rumble. Lighthearted Lori, $5 Rumble rant. Thanks, Chris, for your discernment. It's contagious. Well, thank you, Lori. That's very sweet. And I hope that it is. Man, I hope that I'm right. You know, I don't know that I'm right. I know that what's being said on TV is not right. I know that it can't be right because it doesn't make any sense. It's incoherent. And it is obviously false inside the thing they're saying. It reveals itself as false with almost everything they write. And so it is important to pay attention to that and not assume then that we must accept it as true until we find something to replace it with. Okay. Sometimes there's not going to be a replacement. I don't know what happened in Russia with 11 drones that were taken down by the Russians before they did any damage. And no one else does either. I'm inclined to think that never happened. Okay. Even if there is video of it out there, I am still inclined to think that never happened because it's, of course, quite easy to produce video of that sort of thing happening. And nothing was damaged. So we don't actually have to believe it. We can just ignore it completely because it also doesn't factor in our thinking at all. The principles of that situation are already understood. What happens layered onto that information or to that situation in some kinetic manner doesn't change any of the principles. And so at that point, you don't actually need to learn all the details of this very probable fiction. And you can save yourself a lot of time and energy that way, including a lot of emotional reactions as you determine that one side or the other must win. And then one day you'll see a story that says your side is winning. And then the next day you'll see a story that says your side is losing. And the day after that, you'll see a story that says your side is winning. You'll be like, all right, well, that's 2 out of 3. I'm really winning now. Let me go see who those Ukraine supporters are and tell them that they are losing. And then the next day they get a story about how their side is winning and you're losing. And they text you furiously, aha, I told you. Ukraine is making a comeback right now, according to the New York Times. And you say, come on, Kami, the New York Times. They're like, that's our paper of record. You're going to say that your sources are better than the New York Times? You're just going to play links and sources for 2.5 years on an issue that may not be happening at all. Because you see, the thing is, all of those parts of Ukraine, they're already part of Russia. And it was only ever Ukraine because the UN agreed that it was Ukraine. There may have never been Ukraine as far as Russia is concerned. You know, I know people that think that sounds crazy. That's how countries come into being. The UN does it. Whatever pressure needs to be applied is applied to other small countries. And then they all just agree. 59 nations agree that Juan Guaido is the president of Venezuela. Was Juan Guaido ever president of Venezuela? Answer is no. So what does it mean when the UN and all those countries agree to something? Well, it doesn't mean a goddamn thing. It's utterly meaningless. It is a powerless international body whose former power was supported by a bunch of powers who are no longer successfully able to support it. That's it. That's what we have seen in the world over the last few years. Where are they to rescue Ukraine? They are nowhere. Where are they to rescue Taiwan? They are nowhere. Where are they to rescue Israel? Nowhere. Guyana? Nope. Burkina Faso? No. Myanmar? No. Mali? Nope. Niger? No. Gabon? No. How many do we need to do? The regime gets kicked out of country after country after country after country. And they do nothing. So where is the power? And if the power is not there, if the U.S. military is not going to enforce the regime's position on all of these things, then why should we even take the regime's position seriously? Because they tell us a lot of countries agree with them? Well, that doesn't mean anything at all. Who cares? If they don't have the power to enforce what they say, then what they say is meaningless. And that is exactly the case, the situation we find ourselves in. So, yeah, we don't need to know every detail of that fiction. All of the fought over regions in Ukraine are just Russia. They are nothing else other than Russia. They are not Ukraine. They are only Russia. I mean, sooner or later. But they invaded Kursk. Sure they did. Oh, you know what? Let's do this because I don't think anybody's dropped any Rumble rants, and that was the end of questions on the Substack. So let's go see. I have a feeling I will find this quickly. I hope that I find. You know what? I'm going to just use summarize the Russian. All right. Okay. Let's do some history. Hey, by the way, you want to tell me you don't have proof that the Kursk situation is fake? Fine. Okay. Default to the mainstream media story if you like. If that makes you happy, believe what you want. I'm not trying to convince you I'm right. Well, I am, I guess. I'm showing you why I think what I think. And if that convinces you that I am right, then maybe that's what I tried to do. I don't know. But I don't care if you think I'm right or not, is what I'm trying to communicate. I want you to form your own conclusions. That's what this whole exercise is for. I do not care at all if you go along with my conclusions, okay? So here we are on perplexity.ai, summarize the Russian defeat of the Nazis at Kursk. This is me. That's my command for the AI. And here's what we have. The Battle of Kursk, major World War II Eastern Front battle and the largest tank battle in history. From July 5th, 1943 to August 23rd, 1943. So August 23rd is in 2 days. 81-year delta. Wow. Near Kursk, southwestern Russia, Germany versus Soviet Union. And let's just do one more thing. Just so we can place ourselves in space as we also place ourselves in time. Or as Poso calls it, map break. There's Kursk. Let's zoom out a little bit. Okay. Kharkiv. Kyiv. Donetsk. Rostov-on-Don. That is where Yevgeny Prigozhin's Wagner group tried to stage their coup. They were going to go to Rostov-on-Don, and then they were going to march all the way up to Moscow. And they were going to take over the Kremlin. There was such a great threat. All the retards on Twitter spent the entire day on that. Mario Knopfel doing live coverage. Oh, we're getting a report in from Rostov-on-Don. Here is Zaporozhye, where they keep trying to advertise a nuclear disaster. So basically, the Dnieper River is this river that goes all the way down. And essentially, most of this here and all of this down here is all just Russia now. And of course, Crimea is Russia as well. Just, this is all Russia. All this whole thing. That's their land bridge, as they called it. Okay? So, map break. And Kursk is up on the, it is to the north of what was formerly Ukraine. Back to perplexity. The Battle of Kursk, fought from July 5th to August 23rd, 1943, marked a pivotal moment in World War II, resulting in a decisive Soviet victory over Nazi Germany. This battle is notable for being the largest tank battle in history and a turning point on the Eastern Front. The battle was set against the backdrop of the Kursk salient, a bulge in the Soviet front line that the Germans aimed to encircle and destroy. The German operation, codenamed Citadel, involved approximately 900,000 troops, 2,700 tanks, and 2,000 aircraft. In contrast, the Soviet forces, having anticipated the German tank attack and fortified their positions, numbered about 1.9 million troops. 4,900 tanks, and 2,900 aircraft. So basically everybody. Ukraine doesn't have anywhere near that many troops. Course of battle. The German offensive began with a pincer movement aimed at the Kursk salient. However, the Soviets had prepared extensive defensive fortifications. The most significant engagement occurred on July 12th at Prokhorovka, where the largest tank battle in history took place, involving around 1,200 tanks from both sides. The Soviets ultimately repelled the German advance, inflicting heavy losses on the Wehrmacht, which began to withdraw on July 16th. By July 16th. As the battle progressed, the Soviets launched their counteroffensive operations, Kutuzov and Rumyantsev, successfully pushing the Germans back and reclaiming key territories, including Oryol and Kharkov, which is also known as Kharkiv. By late August, the Battle of Kursk resulted in staggering losses for both sides. German casualties were estimated around 500,000, while the Soviet losses were approximately 860,000, including 255,000 missing or killed. This battle not only depleted German resources, but also marked the first major failure of a German offensive in the summer, forcing them onto the defensive for the remainder of the war. The Soviet victory at Kursk signified a crucial turning point in the war, shifting momentum in favor of the Red Army. It demonstrated the effectiveness of Soviet defensive strategies and marked the beginning of a series of successful offensives that would eventually lead to the liberation of occupied territories and the advance toward Berlin. So I have to say, Kursk, coming up on an 81-year-old Delta, tells me that this was probably an event reported for the sake of getting some history on this, rather than really actually believing that the Ukrainians, or the Ukrainians, as Victoria Nuland has called them, have any chance of winning or inflicting great loss on the Russians. It's all so silly. Yeah, Tweeter Trash says, damn Ukrainian Nazis blowing up their own people, blowing up bridges, blowing up dams, blowing up Nord Stream pipelines, and trying to blow up nuclear plants. I'm sure glad we're helping them out. Yep, you got a point there. They are our friends as described by our global regime. It is wonderful, isn't it, that all of that is getting exposed and it's all being blamed on the regime. Every now and then, okay? Think about what it would look like if Donald Trump didn't have any way of taking his hands off this stuff, okay? Because it all has to happen. It is an absolute necessity that Americans understand they've been lied to about World War II. And that doesn't mean that the Nazis were good or that all Jews were bad. It just means we were lied to about what happened, okay? They presented us with both sides of the controlled opposition dynamic, and within the controlled opposition dynamic, there is no truth, or there is very little truth. They might occasionally relay facts correctly, but I'm not even sure about that. I mean, I've told you guys countless times, I'm still reading the transfer agreement. I always have like 3 or 4 books where I'm like, I'm going to read a couple chapters of this, couple chapters of this, couple chapters of this. And so I'll go in phases, and I've been in one of those phases. I've probably read 100 pages of the transfer agreement over the last couple of days. And it's all the same thing. It is them trying to reconcile the fact that the Zionists were not only making a deal with the Nazis while saying the Nazis were oppressing them, they were fighting amongst themselves as to who would get the deal based on who would profit the most. The Zionists were doing that. They were fighting with one another over who would procure the contract with the Nazis to transport the Jews, to confiscate the Jews' property, and then transport them down to Palestine so they could claim the global proxy state of Israel. That is what happened in World War II. And it's not like it's a secret. So the controlled opposition dynamic, Nazis are evil, Nazis are good. It's not about that. The Nazis were controlled opposition of the Zionists. The Nazis were the same thing that the Bolsheviks were. The Nazis are the same thing that the Jacobins were before that. They are a regime revolutionary group. Okay. And it doesn't matter if part of that was organically good and people wanting to do the right things for national pride in Germany. We would have the same op run on us right now by Con Inc. That is what they were setting up to do. And Donald Trump was going to be blamed for the vaccine. And we were going to be told that Donald Trump, through COVID and through the vaccine, was responsible for, you guessed it, 6 million deaths. I mean, they're on the road to doing that already. You can just look and see it. Let's see how many COVID deaths there are. Let's try the CDC's COVID data tracker for the United States. Where are we at? Give me the deaths, the data basics. What the hell? Why is it so hard to get? Why is it so hard to get their numbers off the CDC? They used to advertise these numbers on television. Like, hey, look at how many deaths we've created from COVID. Isn't it amazing how many COVID deaths there are? And now you want to find some COVID death numbers. It's really difficult. Okay, so we got, according to worldometers.info. Here, I'm going to share this for those watching. We have 1.219 million COVID deaths in the United States and across the world, 7 million deaths from the coronavirus. And one day we will hear how many vaccine-related deaths. And there are people who are about to tell us that they are our allies and that we must compromise with them, who have blamed millions of what they say are vaccine-related deaths on Donald Trump. It would be a very interesting kind of soft rug pull if we eventually found out that all of these Pfizer documents that Naomi Wolf has gone through and some of these other statistics on vaccine injuries have actually been compiled throughout the past and are being presented as a counter narrative op to the vaccine mandates of 2021 and 2022. And by the way, that's not to deny that people died. They certainly did. I think the vaccines were probably hijacked at some point along the way. But I don't know. We'll see. That story is not over and done with yet. There will be more to learn. And yeah, okay. So, all right, guys, that's about 2 hours. I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you all very much for joining, and thank you for your support of my podcast. As always, that is what keeps me going at this pace. And sooner or later, we'll have to find a different pace so that I can do the other things that may, I still try to talk myself out of the idea that maybe that writing would be more effective at this point. I don't know. Yeah. So I will be back tomorrow, same reasonable time on the same reasonable podcast network. Of course, I do not have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you and everyone else about a pandemic, and Joe Biden will never be president.
Well,
what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
Ah!
And I will not let you down.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What must be what?
In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com. And for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/I'm your moderator. And I'll see you soon down on the range.